Well, if you have a payment plan, let's say that's 5 payments of $2K, then the closer is going to get, call it $200 for that, because they get just 10% of the $2,000 that they close. And if they get the paid in full, then they get $1,000 for that sale. So they get paid 5 times more. And so this incentivizes closers to actually close instead of these kind of like limp-wristed closes. They're rock hard, erect closes, no flaccid closes in this house. And that way, you know, that the prospect actually has been sold on it and is more likely to stick with it in the long term, which for real is actually an important thing. And oftentimes these types of issues come up, like these lacks of execution, when a founder gets a little too far away. And so I like to say, you want to know where the bodies are buried. Like, you want to know in every department what is going wrong as a founder. And if you get too far away from it, then you don't know, which means you don't really add value because you have no context. And I think a lot of people get too far away from sales, or especially revenue generation, too quickly because they like want to scale and they want to give, hand off responsibility to people underneath them. But when you hand stuff off, stats go down, you have abdicated, not delegated. When you delegate, stats stay the same or go up, because theoretically, if you give someone who has equal skill more time to do it because they have more time than you, then stats should improve. And so when you give it to somebody who has less skill than you, and you didn't prepare them and you didn't give them a checklist, then it's more likely that stuff's going to go down. And that's where you have to stay there, and they stay side by side with you until they get it all right. And so with all of this stuff, and you're like, holy cow, that actually, when you think about it, bad framing for, we had to make it congruent. We chunked up discovery to make sure they avoided traps and stayed high level. We simplified it to a 3-pillar pitch with a little bit of a pre-pitch. And we did all of these things on execution to make sure that the team actually was reading the script and actually saying the words the right way. The result of all of this work was we got to a 35% close rate. So that was more than a double, whatever that is, 2.4, I think. 2.4x increase in close rate. Monster. All right, so we're gonna talk about the results of this, and at the end, I'm gonna give you the takeaways that I had for this business that you can use. So the result of all that work is we took our CAC from $5,763 to $2,868. So more than, or about, cut in half what it costs us to get a customer. On top of that, we went from a 1.62, which is very bad ROAS, to a 3.96 ROAS. Much better. And we took our revenue from $569,000 to $860K per month. So we passed our $10 million run rate, and we have sustained that since these improvements have occurred. And then profit, we got to a 30.7% profit margin off of that. And so now this business is making $250,000, $300,000 a month in profit, whereas before it was kind of plateaued and just kind of teetering at that edge. So let's talk about the big takeaways. So what you can do from this for your business, no matter what size you're at. So number one is that you have to keep the main thing the main thing. Obviously, this business was still generating a decent amount of monthly revenue. But the thing is that people discount how much an increase in revenue can disproportionately drop to the bottom line. And so let's say you've got a business that has 10% margins. If you can increase revenue by 50%, you can, in a very real way, disproportionately increase profit. So you could increase profit by 5x when you increase revenue by 10 or 20%. And so understanding the relationship between revenue and profit is something that a lot of business owners don't do. And so sometimes it's cool to trim from the bottom line, but it's so much better to raise the top line and have that extra revenue fall through. And so big picture here, all the way chunked up, the constraint was acquisition. We weren't getting enough customers. Now, underneath of getting enough customers, you'll notice that there's just a pipeline of things that all could be improved. It's like, can we improve our CTR? Can we improve our opt-in? Can we improve our schedule? Can we improve our show? Right? Can we improve the close rate? And so what we did is we just looked at all of them. And the key point here is that we actually looked. And so when we tried to improve the webinar, we weren't just like shooting from the hip. We're like, where are people dropping off? Let's fix it. When we looked at the sales, we're like, where are people suffering? Well, if you're watching the calls, you can see that, wow, the discovery sucks. All right, well, then we need to focus more there at the front. And I will also put this point is that the front is where a lot of times where the cash is. So in the beginning of the webinar, we preloaded it. In the beginning of the call, we preloaded it. Right before we did the pitch, we pre-frame it. And so a lot of times people don't understand how powerful the frame is for setting the expectation about what's about to happen next. The next one is execution over plan. All right, so let me explain what I mean by this. If you have, call it a mediocre script, and you have exceptional execution, you will still outperform somebody who has an amazing script and no one reads it, right? Or you have an amazing webinar deck, but you still sound terrible when you do it. You're not going to do as well as somebody who doesn't have as much of a deck, but sounds really smooth and great. And so a lot of times, this is the boring work that people aren't willing to do. They're not willing to watch game tape. They're not willing to role play with the team. They're not willing to practice themselves when they do repitches or when they do presentations. Or they're not willing to take a content piece, get to the end of it and be like, you know what, we can do that better and we can do it again. And so even for this video, we redid the intro 5 times before you actually saw that. And so you have to be willing to repeat successful actions and just get 5% better over and over and over again, because that betterness across this whole thing compounds. And so one of the big things that I've learned around improving anything is that you can actually have measurement as intervention. And it's like, okay, that's a big fancy word. Is that a drug rehab thing? No, that's not what I mean. If you want someone to lose weight, the first step is to get them to measure their weight. And you can actually just have someone measure their weight and they will lose weight. If you just have someone report on their profit,